Now there is a false narrative out there. And again, I live in District 30. And Congresswoman Crockett has done nothing to quell this false narrative. Let's start with the gerrymandering, because it will make it. I have to tell you this from the beginning, and then we're going to get to the primary on what happened on primary night, because what happened on primary night is also a false narrative. This is all a false narrative. Let's begin with this. There were 5 districts that Trump called Abbott. And I want you to pay attention like you're in school, okay? Trump called Abbott and said, I need you to find me 5 districts. We know that. Now, what I'm posting here is the districts as they were, and then the districts once they were gerrymandered. And this is important because I'm going to get to the point of District 30, which is Congresswoman Crockett's district. Now, these are the 5 districts. District 9, you can see it was solid Democratic when they gerrymandered it. It's now Republican. That district is in Houston. District 28, mostly Democratic. It still tilts Democratic, and it'll probably go Democratic. District 28 is in South Texas. And Talarico has a very strong showing in South Texas in District 28. And this is one of the ones that scares the Republicans, because I don't believe this district is going to flip Republican because of the strength of Talarico's popularity in District 28. And District 28 is South Texas, San Antonio down to the border, and he's very strong there. District 32 flipped. District 32 was solid Democrat, and it flipped when they gerrymandered it. It went to Republican. Now, those of you who are in the Dallas area, you are familiar with District 32. District 32 is Dallas County, Collin County, Denton County, and includes they had to encompass the most Republican of those areas: Mesquite, Rowlett, Richardson. And the old 32, if you remember, is what Colin Allred represented. District 34, I believe, is going to the Republicans. Thought they were smart. While it's listed as a toss-up, I believe that District 34 is going to go to Talarico too, because of where District 34 is. District 34 is down near the Gulf Coast, all the way from Coastal Bend to Rio Grande Valley. And we know his strength is the Rio Grande Valley, and we know his strength is also along the Coastal Bend. So while they're listing that as a toss-up, the Republicans thought they were smart. That district is likely going to go to Talarico, 34. District 35. If you've been in Texas any amount of time, you've heard of Lloyd Doggett. Lloyd Doggett was the representative for District 35. He was solid Democratic. Lloyd Doggett had represented District 35 for something like 31 years, since 1995. That they are listing that as likely Republican. Now, District 35 is in San Antonio. And we know that San Antonio is heavily Hispanic, and we know that San Antonio went for Talarico. So the Republicans may have cut off their noses to spite their face, because these are the 5 districts. Now, notice what district. Let me put this back up here, because I want y'all to get this. Notice what district is not in there. District 30 is not in there. District 30 is Congresswoman Crockett's district, where I live. Let me show you that. I have here the current. Back then it was the current and proposed, but the proposed is how it ended up. This is what they voted on, the redistricting. You will see District 30 down in the lower right-hand corner. For me, it's the lower right-hand corner. And you will see the difference in what it was on the left-hand side and what it eventually passed to be on the right-hand side. You will see there's not very much difference. It slid west toward forward. Actually, it picked up more African-American voters, people of color voters. So that's what District 30 looks like. Now, this is where the misunderstanding come in, because people say, and the narrative is, that Congresswoman Crockett got gerrymandered out of her district. These are the districts, I'm going to put them back up there. These are the districts that got gerrymandered. District 30 is not in that district. Now, District 30 did get gerrymandered in the sense of the word, but District 30 was gerrymandered in favor of Jasmine Crockett. Now, they were snarky. And when I say they were snarky, they were snarky because they drew her house out of the district. And this is where it gets sticky. They drew her house out of the district. But our district, District 30, actually got blacker. Yeah. So when people say, and this narrative has been playing out and playing out and playing out, and Congresswoman Crockett knows better, but she doesn't correct people. That district is still, District 30 is still District 30, even more so African American. That's why Freddie Haynes, Reverend Freddie Haynes, who's the pastor of Friendship West, who is actually Jasmine Crockett's pastor, is going to win this district. Now, let me go back to when I said they were snarky. They were snarky in drawing her house out of the district. Well, don't you say, well, Dorothy, then does that mean that that means she couldn't represent the district? Not in Texas. Not in Texas. You know why? You know why? You don't have to, by law, you don't have to live in the district you represent as a congressperson in Texas. So even though they drew her house out of the district was not gerrymandered. The district was not cracked, meaning it was not torn apart like other districts. And I'm going to get to that too in a minute, because all of this plays together. They drew her house out of the district. They made the district more compact African American, which still made it a very, 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 very safe Democratic district. Congresswoman Crockett could still represent District 30 if she wanted to, whether her house was drawn out of the district or not. She could still live exactly where she's always lived. Or if she wanted to choose to move across the line into District 30, she could have done that too. But it was not mandatory, because in Texas, by law, a congressional representative does not have to live in the district that they represent. So to say that she lost her district or she was gerrymandered out of her district, to say that they took her district from her, is not true. We still here in District 30. And she could have still represented the district had she chosen to, even though they were snarky and drew her house out of district. That's what politics, that's what people do. But no harm, no foul, she still retained the right to represent District 30 if she wanted to. Now, who should be butthurt is not Congresswoman Crockett. It should be Congressman Mark Vesey. Let me go back to this again. This right here. Congressman Vesey is in Fort Worth. Congressman Vesey had represented District 33. And you notice 33 is not on there, and I haven't talked about 33. Congressman Vesey represented District 33 in Fort Worth since 2013. his district, if anybody should be butthurt, it should be Mark Vesey in Fort Worth, in what was District 33. Because what the Republicans did was take a wrecking ball to District 33. 33, not 30. 33 over in Fort Worth, Mark Vesey's district in Fort Worth. And what did they do? They totally dismantled District 33, represented by Mark Vesey in Fort Worth, and redrew that whole district and put it not in Fort Worth, but in Dallas. Let me put this back up there, because I want y'all to get this. You don't see 33 on there. Those are the 5 districts. 30 is not on there. 33 is not on there. So when they did away, totally did away. Let me put this, when they did away with District 33 and put it over in Dallas, if you look on the left hand side, I'm facing you, so on the left, when you see District 33, 12, 24, and 33 right together, that is 33 in Fort Worth. If you look on what is my right hand side, because I'm facing you, you see they moved the new District 33 is way over east in Dallas. So the old 33 that Mark Vesey represented in Fort Worth, which is in the west, they dismantled that district totally and renamed a District 33 over in Dallas, which meant that Representative Mark Vesey is totally lost his district. So what was left for him to do was, since his district was remantled and redrawn and moved to, in essence, now it's in Dallas. Here's a man who has represented Fort Worth in that district since 2013. So he had a decision to make. Now he's the one that had the decision to make, not Jasmine Crockett, because Jasmine's district is safe. It ain't changed. It ain't changed at all. But Mark Vesey, if anybody ought to be butthurt, is him. So he had a decision to make. Was he going to run for the new District 33 over in Dallas? Now, this man lives in Fort Worth. This man is a native of Fort Worth. But if he still wanted to serve in Congress, in District 33, he would have had to run in District 33. Now, he could have still lived in Fort Worth if he wanted to. Because remember, I told you, a congressperson don't have to live in the district that they represent. But why would he live in Fort Worth and represent a district in Dallas? It makes no sense. So what Mark Vesey decided to do was he was going to run for Tarrant County Judge against Republican Tim O'Hare. That was really the only thing left for Mark Vesey to do. Either try as a man in Fort Worth, and if y'all know Fort Worth and Dallas, you know Fort Worth and Dallas, we different. we just different. So was he going to try and represent a district in Dallas and he lived in Fort Worth, a native of Fort Worth? No. So he had to suck it up and say, you know what? They took my district. They just didn't move my house. They dismantled my whole district. All the people that he represented, that he had developed relationships with since 2013, all of that gone. All of that is gone. So if anybody ought to be butthurt, it ought to be Mark Vesey. It ought to be him. Okay. So let's look at this again, because I want you to get it. Because all the stuff that's out there, that's not the one I want to show you. This is the one I want to show you again. 32. District 32 was solid Democrat. Now District 32 is solid Republican because they moved it further north and east to include Collin County, some of Denton County, and Mesquite, Rowlett, Richardson. If y'all in Dallas, y'all know that ain't nothing but redneck Republican out there. So they took that solid Democratic district, District 32, and made it solid Republican. Now, Colin Allred had represented District 32, and this is where it gets interesting, y'all. Colin Allred had represented District 32. Colin Allred left to run for Senate. he had run for Senate twice before. So District 32, still all Democrat. So Colin Allred decided to run for Senate. And guess who that put him up against? James Talarico. Yeah. So when Colin Allred left District 32, which was still Democrat, to run against, this is how far back, y'all, this goes. That's why this ain't no all of a sudden thing that's happened here. It was Talarico and Colin Allred. Colin Allred represented that solid Democrat District 32. Colin Allred had run for Senate twice before. So when Colin Allred left 32 to run for Senate, Julie Johnson succeeded him in representing District 32 because District 32 was the Democrat district. Now, the second person who ought to be butthurt in this is Julie Johnson. It's Julie Johnson. Because Julie Johnson was representing District 32. But, like I showed you, that's what happened to District 32. When they gerrymandered that district, unlike District 30, Jasmine Crockett's district, District 32 went solid Republican. 32. So what's left, really, is 30 and 33. District 30, Congresswoman Crockett already had. Colin Allred was running for Senate. Julie Johnson was in 32. And then Congresswoman Crockett decided that she was going to run for Senate. She didn't have to, because her district was safe. More African American than it ever been. Unlike Julie Johnson's district, unlike Mark Beasley's district, which they just totally dismantled. So when Congresswoman Crockett decided to leave District 30, a safe Democratic seat that had not been gerrymandered at all, but made more African American, her house, as I said, had been gerrymandered out, but that's no issue in Texas, because she could still represent this district as long as she wanted to represent this district. So Congresswoman Crockett decided to run for Senate. Allred had already, it was Allred and Talarico. Julie Johnson representing 32. Then 32 changed to Republican. 33 in Fort Worth got dismantled and made a new Democratic district in Dallas. Mark Beasley was out. He was not going to live in Fort Worth and represent the new 33. As I said, he decided to run for county judge. He decided against that. So Mark Beasley is just totally out. Out. So that new District 33 is a Democratic district. Julie Johnson, since 32 was gerrymandered to Republican, everything was set. Until it wasn't. When Congresswoman Crockett decided very late to get into the Senate race, filing on the last day, December 8th, 2025, that train was well down the road, and it caused a lot of angst in the Democratic Party. So her good friend, Allred, yielded to Congresswoman Crockett. Freddie Haynes then got in the primary to run for District 30. Congresswoman Crockett was running for Senate as of December 8th, which in essence, Allred had a decision to make. And he decided that he was going to run against Julie Johnson in District 33, that new district in Dallas that was Fort Worth, but they recreated in Dallas. So when Congresswoman Crockett decided she was not gerrymandered out of her district, they drew her house out of the district. And I'm going to keep emphasizing this because in Texas, you do not have to live in the district to represent the district. District 30, we did not change. The only change with District 30 is that we got more African American. Congresswoman Crockett did not get gerrymandered out of her district. She could have still represented District 30, but she chose to get into a race that was well down the road. Talarico and Allred were well down the road. We're going way back to almost January. So when all of this was happening, the gerrymandering, and if y'all were watching me and with me, we kept up with it all summer, all fall. We kept on top of this thing. So when in the fall is she or is she not? Is she or is she not? And then there were some polls run. And the Republicans, and I have it on good authority, and I should have posted it. I'm not going to belabor that much, but the Republicans did false polls showing that if Congresswoman Crockett got into the race, that she could win the primary. Those were false polls planted by Republicans. And my back channels tell me that it's true. And I saw it in writing. So those polls were out there. Now, Congresswoman Crockett said she did her own polling, which showed that she could win the primary, which was cool. But getting into the primary on the very last day of filing, December 8th, when it was well down the road with Talarico and Allred, created a lot of problems for the Democrats. So when Allred got out of the race to yield to Congresswoman Crockett, who did not have to give up her district, that created a problem for Julie Johnson. Because Julie Johnson was running in that District 33. And then the brouhaha with he said, she said, with the Democratic lady that's the influencer who said that Talarico, y'all remember all that Talarico called Allred a weak man, but Talarico said, no, I didn't say that. I said, he ran a weak race and blah, 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 and blah, blah, this and all that and all that and all that. Like they say, this, that, and the other, this, that, and the third. So that brouhaha. And then Allred gets on and he does his thing from the gym with the steam coming out of his head and challenging Talarico, man to man, mano, mano. Y'all went through all that, Democrats. That caused even more splits. So it was frustration. Now, Mark Vesey out the picture. But with Julie Johnson, Talarico, Congresswoman Crockett, and Allred, a lot of tension. And that tension was because the unexpected entrant into that race was Congresswoman Crockett. No one saw her giving up her safe seat. A seat that was made even safer after gerrymandering. I'm going to say it again. A seat made even safer after gerrymandering. So Allred gets out. And Allred, as I said, had run for Senate twice. Very well regarded in the district that he ran in as a representative. He had 32 before Johnson did. Julie succeeded him. So he yielded to Congresswoman Crockett, who filed December 8th, and then the race was on between Congresswoman Crockett and James Talarico. But the problem was By the time Congresswoman Crockett got into the race on the last day of the last month of the year, it had already been a long year of campaigning for Talarico. Talarico. He had built an incredible machine. By the time she filed on December 8th, I think Talarico, on his website, he had 10,000 volunteers, boots on the ground. He had a solid statewide team. He had a state director. He had field offices. Now, another thing, and let me say this about the race thing. Jasmine Crockett is a Dallas. No, let me finish this up, and then I'm gonna get to the race thing. So, what was Allred going to do? Well, since he yielded to Congresswoman Crockett, who did not have to give up her seat, he filed to run against Julie Johnson in District 33 for the representative seat, to go back to Congress, in essence recapturing his old, because that really is his old stomping ground. And while Julie Johnson was a by all accounts, because that's not my district, I'm in 30, but by all accounts, she was a good representative. But Allred had more name ID. It came down to a runoff between him and Julie Johnson, and Allred won. So now Allred is back in Congress as representative of the new district 33, which had been by number Mark Vesey's Fort Worth district. So by Congresswoman Crockett getting into the race the way that she did, it upset the apple cart, because that meant that Julie Johnson had to shift. That meant that Mark Vesey had to shift. That meant that Colin Allred had to shift. And that meant that Talarico had to shift, because I've only run a city council race 4-5 times. And once you make your plan, you plan against a particular candidate, because you studied that candidate and you know how to run against that candidate. So it upset the apple cart for Talarico too, because Talarico's game plan was against Allred. Yeah. So if anybody ought to be butthurt in this whole thing, it should be Julie Johnson and Mark Vesey, because by no fault of their own, they are the losers, because Congresswoman Crockett decided to give up her safe seat to get into the race on the last day of the year of filing in a senatorial race that was way down the road between Colin Allred and Talarico. And that upset the whole thing. And y'all, that's the truth. Hey, some of y'all may not want to hear it, but that's the truth. And that's what happened. And you notice that Mark Vesey and Julie Johnson, neither one of them have said a word. But they are the big losers in this. They are the big losers in this. And I'll tell you what else. Julie Johnson is gay. She and her wife could have, screamed to high heaven about the Democratic Party, not supporting LGBTQI, but they didn't. They haven't, and they won't. They could. And that would be a whole nother firestorm, but that's not who, as far as I understand, who Julie Johnson is. So she didn't make a big deal of it, although she's on the outs by no fault of her own. Mark Vesey's on the outs by no fault of his own. So that's what happened in that whole thing. Congresswoman Crockett didn't lose her district at all. She gave up her district voluntarily to get into a race that was way, way, way down the road. And that's how that happened. And she got into the race, unlike Talarico, unlike even Allred, who had built apparatuses, because you have to have, Texas is a huge, huge state. And when she got into the race, there was no state director. There were no field offices. There was no planning. And there was no organization to run a statewide race, the kind of statewide race that she would have had to run. And coupled with that is how the primary night went. Now, if you've been with me for a while, y'all know I told y'all back in December, them crazy Republicans, two things the crazy Republicans wanted to do. First of all, they were going to hand count ballots in Dallas County. Y'all, Dallas County got about 2 million people. And then the crazy Republicans figured out, we might not have enough people to do hand count. So they ditched that. But what they did not ditch was doing away with countywide voting on election day, which had been in Dallas County for several years, and it had worked fine. But both parties have to agree. And up until now, and Alan West is out as chairman, as Dallas County chairman, but they agreed last fall, the Republican Party of Dallas County voted to not hold election day voting during the primary, that you have to vote in your primary. You could not vote countywide, as had been the practice all along. The Republicans decided that, y'all, back in the fall. The Republicans told the Dallas County Republican Party told the Dallas County Democratic Party that they would not, because they have to sign a contract. They have to sign an agreement. Because the law says they have to be in agreement. And the Republican Party said no, so that was off. There would be no countywide voting on primary night. The Republicans decided that back in late fall. The Dallas County Democratic Party knew this back in late fall. What happened on March 3rd, what happened on primary night, didn't happen. There was no trick that was pulled on black people, on black voters at all. The Democratic Party, and I said it at the time, and I put it on Facebook and everywhere, because I said, I said, where is the lie? This was the fault of the Dallas County Democratic Party in informing their voters. And it was the fault of the candidates who were on the ballot not informing their voters. This did not happen the day of the election. The Dallas County Commissioner's Court, and I've been around a long time. I used to work down with the Commissioner's Court when I worked for the county judge. I ain't never known this to happen before. The Dallas County Commissioner's Court did their part. The Dallas County Commissioner's Court allocated $1 million to get the word out that there would be no countywide voting on election night. The Dallas County Commissioner's Court allocated $1 million to get the word out to the voters. The press, the state press, the local press, and y'all, it wasn't just Dallas County, it was Williamson County too. They chose to do this in Williamson County because that's where Talarico's home county is, and they chose to do it in Dallas County because that's where Jasmine Crockett's home base is, home county. They didn't do this statewide. They were very strategic because they knew exactly what they were doing, and they targeted Williamson County and Dallas County to not agree to have countywide voting on election night. The Dallas County Democratic Party knew this from back in the fall. The County Commissioners Court knew this and allocated $1 million to get the word out. And of course, the Dallas County Democratic candidates knew this, and it was the responsibility of all three of them. The county did their part. We did our part because that was my money too. I'm in Dallas County too. Everybody who lives in Dallas County, we did our part because we paid the price of that $1 million. That's our tax dollars that went to notify people. And every time I saw somebody snotting and crying, talking about, oh, they did this, they did. No, they didn't. And it's your responsibility as a voter to understand what's going on too. But the error was on the part of the candidates. Congresswoman Crockett didn't put out any information informing people that the primary had changed. The Dallas County Democratic Party did very little. I don't know where our $1 million, went, y'all, the tax dollars that the County Commissioners Court put out to notify people. And come election night, let me show you this. While I'm at it. This is from the Texas Tribune. And you will notice I underlined January 9th. This is from January 9th, 2026, from the Texas Tribune. And this was in every newspaper. It was in Dallas Morning News. It was in all the newspapers across Texas. Dallas and Williamson counties end countywide voting sites for primary election day. Dallas and Williamson County Republicans are shifting away from using countywide voting sites on election day for Texas's March 3rd primary. Democrats will have to fall in line. And this particular story was done by Natalia Contreras, January 9th, 2026. That was January 9th. The primary wouldn't be until March. And that wasn't the only newspaper. It was in Houston paper. It was in Dallas paper. It was in papers all over the state. This doesn't happen. This just did not happen election night. Coupled with that, there were 10 days of early voting that people could vote anywhere they wanted to for 10 days, anywhere in the county. And then on election day, as all the newspaper had warned, as the Democratic Party should have done a better, Dallas County Democratic Party should have done a better job of, and the candidates should have done a better job of, they did not. So then you had people out there confused. A lot of people didn't get to vote. It was some Republicans too, but mostly Democrats because they just didn't pay attention. Low information voters. And that's what happened on primary night. It was no planned conspiracy to keep Black people from voting. It was no planned conspiracy to keep Democrats from voting. That is what happened. That is what happened on primary night. And then, and I'll say this about race. I hate when it comes to race, but race is always the issue. James Talarico cannot be blamed for being born white. He can't be blamed for being born white. No more than Congresswoman Crockett could have been blamed for being born Black. Talarico was born and raised in a part of Texas that's white. It's mostly white and Hispanic. The county that he represents, Williamson County, is 52% white, 25% Hispanic, 7.5% 42.5% black. It's 7% black. So that was his environment. That's where he grew up. You can't blame the boy for that. On the other hand, in being in an urban district, in an urban county like Dallas County, that's mostly African American. Actually, I take that back. Dallas County is predominantly Hispanic. Yeah. Dallas County has only like 25% white people. Dallas County is mostly Hispanic, 42.3%. Second is white people at 25%. And African Americans, a third in population at 22%. So it's flipped as far as Dallas County, what Congresswoman Crockett runs and from, her base, and where he's from. Can't blame him for that, but some people do. So y'all, that's the story. That's what happened in redistricting, and I think I said all I need to say. That's what happened during redistricting. That's how the districts went. That's how this race went. And if you hear anybody again say that Congresswoman Crockett got gerrymandered out of her district, you tell them no, she did not. She didn't. Like I say, they were snarky and moved her house. That don't make no difference. In Texas, you can represent the district. And our district, thankfully, is even more better than it was, because it's even more better because it's more African American, and it's good. We good. District 30 is good. We're gonna miss Congresswoman Crockett, but that was her choice, not ours. She chose to do something else, and we make choices. And she took a gamble and she lost.